8,848 meters above sea level, the death zone. Up here, the air is so thin that the human body starts dying with every passing second. The temperature drops to 40 below. The wind tears the skin from your face. But the scariest thing on Everest isn't the cold. It isn't the height. It's the people who never came back. More than 200 bodies lie frozen, locked forever in their final positions. Some rest right on the trail. Climbers step over them. They take photos of the summit just a few meters away from the dead. And among them, there's one everyone knows. No one calls him by his real name. He has another one, simple, haunting. Green Boots. He lies curled up inside a small cave, 8,500 meters high. His arms folded against his chest, his face turned away from the wind, his legs stretched toward the exit. On his feet, a pair of bright green mountaineering boots. For 20 years, climbers used him as a landmark. Turn left after Green Boots. 300 meters to Green Boots. Guides pointed him out. Exhausted climbers stopped to catch their breath beside the body. No one knew his real name. No one asked. He was simply Green Boots. But who was he? Why did he die in that cave? And most of all, how did his body become the most recognizable symbol of death on Everest? Everest is a graveyard, the highest one on Earth. More than 200 people never made it down. Their bodies aren't buried or carried away. They simply remain where they fell, on the slopes, in crevices, right along the path to the summit. The cold preserves them. The frost stops time. A climber who died 30 years ago looks as if he passed away yesterday. A bright jacket, a frozen face, a hand reaching toward the sky. Imagine it. You're climbing toward the dream of your life, gasping for air. Every step burns. And then you see someone sitting by a rock, head bowed, as if resting. But he's not resting. He's dead. Maybe for 10 years. That's the reality of Everest. The dead have become part of the landscape. Experienced guides give them nicknames. The Sleeping Beauty, a woman in a purple suit. The German in red, a climber frozen in a crimson jacket. Hanu, the Finn who stayed forever by the rock at 8,300 meters. These names are passed from one expedition to another, like road signs, like marks on a map. When you pass the Sleeping Beauty, turn right. After Hanu begins the hardest section. People get used to them. They stop being afraid. Beginners flinch the first time, but an hour later, they walk on without looking back. One climber once said that during a night ascent in 2012, he shone his headlamp down at his boots, and the beam suddenly caught a face, just half a meter from the trail. He stepped aside and kept going. Didn't even stop. On Everest, death becomes routine. Terrifying, familiar, almost invisible. But one body stands apart from that grim list. One became a legend, a symbol, a warning that can't be ignored. Thousands have seen him. He's been written about in blogs, shown in documentaries, whispered about in base camps. Why him? Because the place where he lies is impossible to miss. 8,500 meters up, the northeast route. Right before the final push to the summit, there's a small cave, or rather, a hollow in the rock. A natural shelter from the wind. And there, inside that small shelter, a man curled up. He's lying on his side, knees pulled to his chest, hands clenched tight against his body, head bowed, face hidden under the hood. The fetal position. The body's final attempt to stay warm, its last instinct to survive. But survival never came. His body froze in a bright orange climbing suit, a flash of color against the gray rocks and white snow. And yet, what catches your eye most are his legs. They stretch outward toward the cave's exit, right onto the trail. And on his feet, a pair of bright green boots, neon green, almost glowing. You can spot them from far away. Every climber on the north route passes those legs. They literally step over them. They stop to catch their breath, leaning on a rock just a few inches from the dead man. One guide remembered, in 2008, he was leading a group when one of his clients ran out of strength. The man sat down right at the cave entrance, his back to the body, drinking water and chewing an energy bar, while behind him lay Green Boots. Can you picture that? Another climber said he once stepped inside the cave on purpose, wanting to see it up close. He crouched beside the body, and only then he realized it wasn't just a corpse, it was a warning. Years passed, snow kept covering the cave, and the wind kept uncovering it again. The boots would disappear, then reappear. But they were always there, Bright, unmistakable, like a beacon, hundreds of photos, thousands of stories, blogs, forums, documentaries. Everyone knows that spot. Everyone knows those boots. But who was this man? For years, no one spoke his name. He was just a faceless symbol, an anonymous victim of altitude, until witnesses came forward, people who had seen him alive, people who knew his final day. His name was Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber, 28 years old, an officer in the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. He died on May 10, 1996, the day Everest witnessed its deadliest tragedy when the mountain claimed 8 lives in a single day. Tsewang Paljor reached the summit. He achieved his dream. And just hours later, he died in that cave, alone, in the dark, in the cold. His body remained there forever. It became a landmark, a legend, a warning to those who followed. But Tsewang was more than a body in green boots. He was a person. He had a family. He had dreams. And he had a reason for climbing that mountain with everything he had. But before we dive into his story, there's one question we need to ask. Why do people climb Everest at all? On May 29, 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first to reach the summit. The world went wild. Newspapers called it a triumph of the human spirit, the conquest of the final frontier. And from that moment, everything changed. The mountain stopped being a mystery. It became a goal, a checkbox on a list of achievements. At first, only professionals went there, seasoned climbers who had devoted their lives to the mountains. They trained for years. They prepared for every expedition like for a military operation. Then came the boom. The 1990s. Commercial expeditions opened Everest to everyone. Pay $60,000 to $80,000 and they'll take you to the top. No experience needed, no training required, just money. The companies promised, "We'll handle everything for you. Sherpas will carry your gear. Guides will set the ropes. Oxygen tanks will wait at every stop. You just have to walk." And people did. Businessmen wanting to add Everest to their list of life achievements. Officials looking for a good story for their careers. Bloggers chasing 1 million views. In 2019, a traffic jam formed at the summit. Imagine that, a line. At 8,800 meters, people standing in line for a photo with the prayer flags, gasping for air, freezing, losing precious time. Several climbers died simply because they waited too long for their turn to take a selfie. Captain Mahan Singh, a veteran Indian mountaineer, said a line that became famous. Today, it's easier to climb Everest than to keep quiet about it. The mountain turned into an attraction, a kind of Disneyland for the rich. Ropes mark every route. Ladders hang over deep crevasses. Base camps look like small towns with cafes, Wi-Fi, even showers. One journalist wrote, "I saw a man in a $3,000 down jacket who didn't know how to tie his crampons. A Sherpa had to do it for him. That man was paying to be dragged to the summit, literally dragged. The romance was gone. All that remained was status, the right to say, 'I've been on top of the world.' But the mountain doesn't forgive carelessness. It doesn't distinguish between professionals and tourists, the rich and the poor, the experienced and the clueless. To the mountain, everyone is equal, and the price of a mistake is always the same." Tsewang Paljor didn't climb Everest for selfies, not for fame. He had another reason, something deeply personal and far more important. But there's something on Everest that stops even the most confident climbers: the bodies. They're like road signs. Only instead of saying dangerous curve, they say, "This is where the real ones die." Every body is a story, a dream that never came true. Someone who also wanted to reach the top, who also believed they'd make it, who thought they'd come home a hero, and now they lie on the slope, forever. Take the Belgian climber Van Her, an experienced mountaineer, one of the few who had conquered the 7 summits. Everest was meant to be his grand finale, the crowning achievement of a lifetime. He reached the top on May 11, 1996. He celebrated, took photos, but on the way down, the storm caught him. Van Her sat down by a rock to rest and never stood up again. They found his body the next day, sitting with his back against the stone, hands resting on his knees, as if he'd just fallen asleep. But it wasn't sleep. Years passed. Climbers kept walking by. Some stopped, looked at him, and understood, this is the price. Or the Sherpa named Lobsang Jangbu. He worked with the famous American guide Scott Fisher. Lobsang was strong, tireless, knew the mountain like his own home, but even that couldn't save his leader. Scott Fisher died that same May 1996 on the southern slope. Later, Lobsang told reporters, "I watched him fade away. There was nothing I could do. Absolutely nothing." That's the most terrifying thing about Everest. Not the cold, not the altitude, the helplessness. You see someone, they're still breathing, still alive, but you can't help them because you can barely stand yourself, because every move drains the last bit of strength you have, because if you stay too long, you'll die too. One climber said that in 2006, he passed a woman sitting on the slope. Her eyes were open, her lips were moving. She was asking for help. He stopped, tried to lift her, couldn't. She was too heavy. The air was too thin. He left her an oxygen tank, promised to send help, and kept climbing. When rescuers arrived, it was too late. He still can't forget her face. He said, "I see her every night. She looks at me, and I know I could have done more, but I didn't." That's what Everest does to people. It forces you to choose your life or someone else's. And most of the time, the instinct to survive wins. You look at a body on the slope and see yourself. You realize how thin that line is between life and death, thinner than paper. One wrong step, one mistake, one moment of weakness, and you become the next landmark. Tsewang Paljor knew that. He'd seen the photos, heard the stories. His instructors warned him, 1 in 3 who climb Everest never come back, and still, he went. Because he didn't have a choice. Tsewang Paljor was born in a small village in Himachal Pradesh, northern India, where the mountains are high and life is hard. His family of 6 lived in a 2-room house. His father worked on construction sites. His mother sold vegetables at the market. There was barely enough money for food, sometimes not even for that. Tsewang was the oldest son, and in a family like that, it's not a title. It's a duty. The duty to pull everyone out of poverty. At 15, he dropped out of school. Not because he didn't want to study, but because someone had to earn money. His younger brothers and sisters needed to eat every day. Not every other day. Every day. He started working as a laborer, carrying bricks, digging trenches, earning next to nothing. But it was still better than nothing. Then he heard about the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, the ITBP, an elite unit guarding India's borders in the Himalayas. They paid well, provided housing, food, and training. Tsewang applied. He got in. He was 19. For the first time in his life, he could send money home every month, regularly. His parents fixed the roof. His younger siblings stayed in school. Hope appeared. But Tsewang wanted more. The ITBP had a special mountaineering division. Climbers who trained in the mountains, scaled peaks, represented India in international expeditions. And most importantly, they earned 3 times more than regular border officers. 3 times more. For a boy from a poor mountain village, that was like winning the lottery. Tsewang began to train relentlessly. Every day, after his shifts, he ran with weights, lifted, studied mountaineering from worn-out books, and slept only 4 hours a night. His colleagues laughed at him. "Why kill yourself? You're already doing fine." But he knew why. He knew his family was waiting, that his father was aging, that his younger brother dreamed of becoming a doctor. But there was no money for school. 2 years later, Tsewang was selected for the mountaineering division, one of only 20 chosen out of 500 candidates. His commander told him, "You have a will of steel, Paljor. You'll go all the way." And Tsewang believed him. The training got tougher. He learned to cross glaciers, climb sheer walls, survive in brutal conditions. He fell in love with the mountains, their harsh beauty, that feeling when you stand on a summit and the whole world lies beneath your feet. But this wasn't romance. It was work, dangerous, exhausting work. Some of his comrades were injured. One fell from a cliff and was left disabled. Tsewang saw it all and kept going. In 1995, he joined his first major expedition, a peak 6,500 meters high. He succeeded, returned a hero. Command took notice. Then, in early 1996, came the news. The ITBP was organizing an Everest expedition, the North Route, India's flag on the roof of the world. They needed 6 men, the best of the best. Tsewang Paljor made the list. He was 28, in the best shape of his life, physically ready, mentally unshakable. He had everything it took to reach the summit. When he calls home with the news, his mother cries. Out of fear. She's heard of Everest, of how many never come back. But his father says, "Go, son. This is your chance, our chance." After a successful climb, Tsewang is promised a promotion, more money, a prestigious post. He'll be able to build a house for his family, pay for his brother's education. One climb, one summit, and life will change forever. Tsewang believes it. He trains with obsession, running, meditating, picturing the moment he plants the Indian flag, the moment he becomes a hero. He doesn't know that in a few months his name really will be known, but not the way he dreamed. Not at all. May 10th, 1996. The day that would go down as Everest's darkest. 8 people will die in a single day. Professionals, seasoned climbers, world-famous guides, and among them, Tsewang Paljor. But that morning, no one knows what's coming. The Indian team is at Camp 4, 7,950 meters, the last stop before the final push. The plan? Leave at 3:30 a.m. Climb through the night, reach the summit at dawn, descend before the winds pick up. But something goes wrong from the start. The team can't leave on time. Maybe the oxygen gear is acting up. Maybe someone's not feeling well. The details are fuzzy, but the fact is clear. Instead of 3:30, they start at 8 a.m., a 4.5-hour delay. On Everest, that's catastrophic. Every minute counts, because there's a rule, a hard, unbreakable rule. If you're not on the summit by 2 p.m., you turn back. Doesn't matter how close you are, doesn't matter how badly you want it, you turn back and go down. Because after 2, the weather shifts. The wind rises, the temperature plunges, visibility disappears, and your chances of survival drop to almost zero. Expedition leader Mohinder Singh knows this. He's an experienced climber. He understands the risk. Around noon, he makes his decision. He calls the team together and says, "We're turning back. Too late, too dangerous." But 3 refuse, Tsewang Paljor, Tsewang Samanla, Dorje Morup. They say, "We're so close, just a little more. We can do it." This is what mountaineers call summit fever. When reason shuts down, when you see only the goal, when you're willing to risk everything for the last few meters. Psychologists explain it. In extreme oxygen deprivation, the brain stops working rationally. You lose the ability to judge danger. You think you're in control. You think you'll make it. You think nothing bad will happen. Imagine that. Your body is screaming, "Stop, you're dying," and your brain is saying, "Keep going, you'll be fine." Mohinder Singh tries to talk them out of it. He's the leader. He orders them to turn back, but they don't listen. So, Mohinder makes his choice. He splits the team. 3 go for the summit. The rest turn back. That decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. Later, journalists would ask, "Why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you force them to turn around?" And he'd answer, "At 8,000 meters, everyone is on their own. I couldn't carry them. I could barely stand myself." And so, the 3 continued. Tsewang, Tsewang, Dorje. 3 men against the mountain. The clock keeps ticking. 2 days. 3. 4. They keep climbing, slowly, painfully. Every step burns. Every breath hurts. But they go on. Because the summit is close. Because turning back feels impossible. Because home is waiting. Because this is their chance. 5:35 p.m. They reach the summit. 8,848 meters. The roof of the world. Tsewang Paljor unfolds the Indian flag. He smiles. He hugs his teammates. It's the moment of triumph. The moment he's lived for these past months. They take photos. They celebrate. Maybe they even cry from joy. But that joy lasts only minutes. Literally minutes. The sun begins to set. The temperature drops to 40 below. The wind grows stronger. And then they realize they've made a fatal mistake. Descending in the dark, in the cold, exhausted. It's suicide. But there's no choice. They have to move, because staying means dying. They begin the descent, slowly, uncertainly. Their headlamps barely cut through the dark, and that's when the storm hits. The storm of '96. Meteorologists would later call it the perfect storm. 2 weather fronts collided right above Everest. Winds roared at nearly 200 kilometers an hour. Visibility dropped to 0. With the wind chill, it felt like -70. More than 30 people were on the mountain that day. Several commercial groups, the Indian expedition, the Japanese team, all of them caught in the trap. Tsewang Paljor and his teammates descended blind. The wind knocked them off balance. Snow cut their faces like needles. Breathing became almost impossible. They understood they wouldn't make it back to camp. Too far, too dark, too cold. They needed shelter, now. And then they saw it, a small hollow in the rock, a cave, a break from the wind, their only chance. They crawl inside, curl up, press against each other for warmth. The plan is simple: survive the night. Wait for the storm to pass, then descend in the morning. But morning brings no relief. The storm rages on. Day 2, day 3. And out there, just a few hundred meters away, another team is climbing, a Japanese expedition. The Japanese left on May 11th, one day after the Indians. They're fresh, strong, their oxygen tanks are full, their gear, top-notch. Their leader, Isuke Shigekawa, a seasoned mountaineer, a professional. They climb toward the summit and pass by the cave. One of them notices movement inside. He stops, looks closer. Inside, 3 Indians, alive but barely, frostbitten, exhausted, one of them hardly moving. Tsewang Samanla crawls out of the cave, waving his arms, begging for help. The Japanese stop. They talk it over. One suggests giving them oxygen. Another says, "We can't carry them." Shigekawa makes the call. They keep going. Imagine that, walking past dying men and continuing toward the top. Later, when the scandal breaks, Shigekawa will defend himself. He'll say, "We thought they would descend on their own. We didn't know they were in such bad shape. We couldn't save them." But journalists will track down another member of the team, anonymously. He'll say, "We knew. We saw they were dying." But Shigekawa wanted the summit. He said, "If we stop, we won't make it. The mission will fail." The Japanese reach the summit on May 11th. They take photos with their flag. They celebrate their success. And at that same moment, inside the cave, Dorje Morup dies, the first of the 3. The next day, the Japanese descend. Once again, they pass the cave. Once again, they see the Indians. Only 2 remain, Tsewang Paljor and Tsewang Samanla, barely alive. The Japanese keep walking. One of the climbers later admits to a journalist, "I can't forget their eyes. They looked at us, asking for help, and we just walked past." News reaches base camp. Then the world. A scandal erupts. Japan is accused of heartlessness, of valuing the summit over human life. Headlines call it a disgrace to mountaineering, a betrayal. The Japanese Mountaineering Federation defends the team, saying that at such altitude, rescue is impossible, that they were barely surviving themselves. Stopping would have meant death for everyone. But the public doesn't forgive. Shigekawa receives hundreds of hate letters. He's called a murderer. Sponsors cut ties. And in one interview, he says the line that becomes the symbol of Everest's cold reality. At 8,000 meters, everyone is on their own. That's the law of the mountain. And you know what? He's not the only one who thinks that way. American guide Neil Beidelman later admitted, "On that same day, I saw several people dying. I walked past them, because if I stopped, I would have died too. And so would my clients." That's the truth of Everest. Cruel, uncomfortable, but truth nonetheless. When every breath burns, when your body is dying second by second, when all your strength is spent just moving your own legs, saving someone else becomes impossible. The summit or life, yours or someone else's, the dream or the conscience. Everyone makes their own choice. The Japanese chose the summit and had to live with it. Tsewang Paljor stayed in the cave forever. The cave where he died took on a life of its own. Climbers gave it a name, the Green Boots Cave, or simply, the Cave. It became the final stop before the summit, a place to hide from the wind, catch your breath, check your gear. 8,500 meters, the heart of the death zone. Here, the air pressure is 1/3 of normal. There's so little oxygen that the brain begins to shut down. People start hallucinating, hearing voices, losing coordination. The cave itself is just a small hollow in the rock, maybe 3 meters deep, 1.5 meters wide. Enough to block the wind, not enough to bring warmth. And there, in the corner, lies Tsewang's body, curled up, motionless, covered in frost. Years pass, snow buries him. Then the wind uncovers him again. He disappears, reappears, disappears again. But the green boots, they're always visible, like a beacon, like a warning. Guides point them out to first-timers. See that? That's what happens if you stay too long, if you don't turn back in time, if you think you're stronger than the mountain. Some stop and stare, thinking about it. Others just walk past without slowing down. And then, in 2006, history repeats itself, word for word. A British climber, David Sharp, decides to climb Everest alone. No guide, no team. He's experienced, he's tried twice before. The third attempt should finally be the one. On May 14th, he heads for the summit. Late, far too late. But he keeps going. On the way back, his strength gives out. He reaches the Green Boots cave, crawls inside, and sits down, right next to Tsewang's body. And he can't get up. On the morning of May 15th, the first team passes by the cave, a Turkish expedition. They see David. He's sitting, eyes open, still breathing. One of the Turks stops and asks, "Do you need help?" David doesn't answer. He just stares into space. The team discusses it, then decides, he's too heavy, we can't carry him. And they move on. An hour later, a group from New Zealand comes by, 7 climbers. They see David too. They stop. Their guide steps closer, tries to talk to him. David moves his lips, murmurs something, but the words are impossible to understand. The New Zealanders give him oxygen. They leave 2 tanks. They tell him, "Hold on, we'll send help." And they continue toward the summit. Then come the British. Then the Americans. Then another Indian group. By the end of the day, around 40 people have passed by David Sharp. 40. Some stop for a minute, offer water, leave oxygen. Others just look and keep walking. One climber later admitted, "I took a photo of him, for proof, to show that I saw him." It sounds terrible, I know, but up there, your brain doesn't work right. You don't think normally. By the evening of May 15th, the radio brings the news. David Sharp is dead. He dies in the same cave, in the same spot, right beside Tsewang Paljor. Can you picture it? 2 men, 2 lives, 2 identical endings, 10 years apart. The world explodes again in outrage. Headlines scream, "How is this possible? 40 people walked past a dying man. Where's the humanity? Where's the conscience?" Legendary climber Ed Viesturs said, "This isn't mountaineering. It's an $80,000 selfie tour. People don't go to Everest for the mountain. They go for the photo." David Sharp's family files a lawsuit, demanding an investigation. Someone must answer for the fact that their son died alone while dozens walked past him. But the investigation leads nowhere, because technically, no one is guilty. There's no law on Everest that says you must save another, only an unwritten rule. Everyone is on their own. And the Green Boots Cave becomes the symbol of that rule, a place where humanity dies along with people, where the summit matters more than life, where the dream eclipses everything else. Now, there are 2 bodies there, Tsewang and David, 2 warnings, 2 stories about the same mistake. And yet, people keep climbing, keep walking past, keep making that same mistake over and over again. But why not bring them down? That's the question everyone asks. Families, journalists, ordinary people. Why are the bodies left on the mountain? Why doesn't anyone take them home? The answer is both simple and brutal. At 8,500 meters, the human body is dying, literally dying, second by second. Cells shut down from lack of oxygen, muscles stop working. The brain starts turning off everything non-essential. Up there, lifting your hand to your face takes effort. Taking a single step feels heroic. Carrying your own backpack is agony. Now, imagine carrying another person's body. The average climber with gear weighs about 80 kilograms. Dead weight, unable to help, unable to hold on. Climber Dan Mazer once said, "At 8,000 meters, it's hard to lift a piece of paper. You pick it up and your hands shake. You gasp for air just from that effort. And people ask, why don't you carry the bodies down? Physics doesn't care. Gravity works the same for everyone. But suppose someone decides to try. They assemble a team, experienced Sherpas, top equipment, oxygen, a plan. How much does it cost? Between $100,000 and $130,000 for a single body for one recovery. And that's only the beginning, because the risk is enormous. In 1998, a Sherpa died during a recovery. In 2004, 2 more. In 2010, another. Think about that. A person trying to bring a dead man home ends up dying himself. Sherpa Ang Tsering told reporters, "In 2007, we tried to bring down the body of a Japanese climber. 4 of us were pulling, with ropes, ice axes, everything done by the book. During the descent, the line slipped. The body fell. It dragged one of the Sherpas with it. His partner caught him, literally grabbed his jacket at the last second. After that, they called off the mission." Ang Tsering said, "No amount of money is worth leaving another man up there. The bodies are frozen into the ice, for years, for decades. They become part of the slope itself. To free them, you'd have to chip away at solid ice for hours, in sub-zero cold, gasping for breath. It's not just difficult, it's almost impossible." High-altitude Dr. Kenneth Kamler explains it this way. "At that height, the human body runs on borrowed time. Every movement drains energy you can't replace. You can stay there maybe an hour, 2 at most, and then you start dying yourself. And so, over time, the bodies become part of the mountain, permanent, motionless, untouchable. But there have been attempts, rare, heroic, almost insane ones. In 1998, on the southern slope, an American climber named Frances Arsentiev died. They called her the Sleeping Beauty. She lay on her back, her face calm, as if she were simply asleep. For 9 years, her body remained visible. Climbers passed by and recognized her. Some stopped, whispered a few words, as if she could still hear. Her husband, Sergei, also died trying to save her. They later found his body higher up the slope. In 2007, mountaineer Ian Woodall organized a recovery expedition. He raised money, hired a team of Sherpas. The goal? Bring Frances down and give her a proper burial. The operation took 2 days. The team hacked through the ice, freed her body, wrapped it carefully, and began the descent. They managed to lower her about 200 meters. But then it became impossible. The slope was too steep, too dangerous. They made a decision. They let her go. Her body slid off a cliff and disappeared into a crevasse, buried under snow, hidden from sight. It wasn't a perfect burial, but it was better than lying in plain view of thousands. The mission cost around $120,000. Ian Woodall later said, "I don't regret a single cent. Frances deserved peace." Tsewang Paljor's brother hears the story, and a spark ignites. He wants to do the same, bring his brother home, or at least hide his body, give him some dignity. He starts raising money. He turns to relatives, friends, community groups. He manages to collect $3,000, enough for a memorial ceremony, but nowhere near enough for an expedition. He writes to the ITBP, the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. He reminds them, Tsewang served his country. He died in the line of duty. Doesn't he deserve at least that much? They reply with a formal letter. "We understand your grief, but we cannot allocate funds for such operations." He turns to the media, gives interviews, tells his brother's story, hopes someone will care, that someone will help, but almost no one responds. Because Tsewang isn't the only one, because Everest is full of stories like his, because people simply stop caring, and the family just waits, year after year, waiting for a miracle that never comes. New teams, new climbers, new attempts to conquer the summit, and every time they pass by the Green Boots Cave, by the body of Tsewang Paljor, their fellow climber, their countryman. They pass by, take photos at the summit, come back home to celebration and glory. Reporters ask the officials, "How can you ignore the body of your own officer? Isn't that a disgrace?" The official answer sounds almost absurd. "We cannot confirm that the body belongs to Tsewang Paljor." Can you imagine that? We cannot confirm. Even though everyone knows, the guides know, the climbers know, even tourists who read blogs before their trip know. Green Boots was an Indian border officer who died in '96. In other words, forget him. Pretend he never existed, and it works, for years, for decades. The media stop mentioning Tsewang. His story fades into silence. Only the photos remain online. The Green Boots, without a name, without a story, without the man. His family keeps fighting, but their voices are too quiet, too weak. No one listens. And then something unexpected happens. Spring 2014. A group of Chinese climbers is ascending the north route. They pass by the Green Boots Cave and notice something strange. The cave is empty. The body is gone. The news spreads across mountaineering forums within hours. Discussions, arguments, dozens of theories. Someone writes, "Maybe an avalanche swept him away." Another replies, "Impossible, he was frozen solid." A third suggests, "The Chinese probably removed him before the Olympics to clean up the route." Journalists start digging. They contact climbers who were on the mountain that season and uncover an interesting detail. A large, well-funded Chinese expedition was indeed climbing there in April and May of 2014. Several climbers claim they saw the team working near the cave for hours. Then they left. No statements, no confirmation, but the indirect evidence points to one conclusion. They moved the body, maybe pushed it into a crevasse, maybe covered it with rocks, maybe lowered it further down the slope. Why? The theories vary. Some say it was out of respect, so that a man wouldn't lie exposed before thousands of passing climbers. Others are more cynical. They believe the authorities were preparing for major international events, and corpses on Everest made for bad publicity. The route needed to look clean, and some think it was pure coincidence, that the body simply shifted with the movement of the glacier. No one really knows the truth, and probably never will. But one thing is certain: Green Boots is gone. The Paljor family learns about it from the news. Tsewang's brother calls a journalist who once wrote about him. He speaks quietly, with a hint of relief in his voice. "You know, it's strange, but I'm glad. For the first time in 18 years, I feel something close to peace." The journalist asks why. He replies, "Because now he's no longer a landmark, no longer a photo spot, no longer Green Boots. He's just gone. Maybe he's finally at rest." Tsewang's mother never gives interviews, but neighbors say that, for the first time in years, she began speaking about her son in the past tense. Not, "he's there, on the mountain," but, "he was a good son." The past tense, acceptance, letting go. It's not closure, not justice, not what they deserved, but it's something. The Green Boots cave still exists, climbers still stop there, still hide from the wind, but now it's empty, silent, just a hollow in the slope. No legend, no ghost. Some veteran climbers admit they miss it, that it feels strange to pass by and not see those green boots. Others say, "Good. Finally you can rest there without feeling like you're sitting beside the dead." And the guides, they simply find a new landmark, another rock, another marker. Because on Everest, there's always something to point to and say, "Turn here, go that way. You're almost there." The mountain hasn't changed. People haven't changed. The tragedies still happen. But one story has finally come to an end. Tsewang Paljor climbed Everest on May 28, 1996. He stood at the top of the world, holding the Indian flag, smiling, believing he had changed his life and his family's. A few hours later, he died in a cave at 8,500 meters. For 18 years, his body lay there. It became a legend, a landmark, a symbol, and then, quietly, it was gone. No announcements, no ceremony, just gone. And maybe that's how it was meant to be. Tsewang never wanted fame. He didn't dream of becoming a legend of Everest. He just wanted to help his family, earn enough, give his brothers an education, build a decent home, simple human dreams, ordinary hopes. But the mountain turned him into something else. A warning, a lesson, a price for ambition. Every climber who passed the Green Boots cave didn't see a man. They saw a reminder, a message carved into the ice. This is what happens when you go too far, when you don't turn back, when the summit becomes more important than life itself. And it's the right reminder, a necessary one, because Everest keeps taking lives, every year, every season. In 2019, 11 people. In 2023, 17. In 2024, 8. Numbers, statistics, headlines that last a single day. But behind every number is a person, someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's father, someone's dream. People keep going to the mountain, and they will keep going. Because that's who we are, drawn to the heights, to the limits, to the things that seem impossible to reach. Everest isn't just a mountain, it's a test, a question you ask yourself. How far can I go? And sometimes the answer is cruel. Tsewang Paljor could reach the summit. He was strong enough, brave enough, determined enough. But he wasn't invincible. No one is invincible at 8,000 meters. Up there, nature reminds you, you're only a guest, temporary, fragile, mortal. You can climb, you can touch the sky, but never forget, the mountain doesn't belong to you. You're there on its terms, and the price for forgetting that is final. Today, the cave at 8,500 meters stands empty. The wind whistles through it, snow covers the entrance. Climbers pass by, unaware of the story that once unfolded there. Green Boots is gone, the legend is over, but the memory remains, with his family, with those who knew the truth, and with us. Tsewang Paljor climbed out of love, out of duty, out of the hope of giving those he loved a better life. And if his death made even one person stop, turn back, and choose life over the summit, then he didn't die in vain. No one dies in vain on Everest. Every tragedy is a lesson. Every life is the price we pay for understanding our limits. No one comes back from that mountain the same, even those who survive. Because when you stand at the edge of the world, when you stare into the face of death, when you finally grasp how small you are against the forces of nature, you change forever. If this story moved you, if you want more people to know the truth about Tsewang Paljor and the other forgotten souls of Everest, leave a like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments. Should people still climb Everest today? Or has the mountain become an attraction that's forgotten the price people pay? Share your opinion, tell this story. Let Tsewang Paljor's name never be forgotten. Thank you for staying with me to the end. Take care of yourself, and remember, not every summit is worth your life.